Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm very excited to introduce my very first guest, former Sharks assistant rugby coach, Grant Bashford. Bashy is no stranger to the sports scene in KZN, having represented the union in both rugby and cricket after high school. He began his career in education and very quickly shifted that into the sports world of coaching and worked his way up through the ranks, starting with schools, club, junior professional, and ultimately spent 8 years working as an assistant coach at the Sharks Rugby Union with the likes of Muir, John Plumtree, and Hugh Edwards. He not only coached some of the best players in the country at the time, but also helped to lead the team to two Currie Cup championship titles in 2008 and 2010, and two Super 14 rugby finals in 2007 and 2012. Since then, Bashy's been involved with a number of different businesses. He's done a number of different coaching stints, most notably working as the head coach of the Cannon Eagles in Japan. And since 2014, he returned to his alma mater, Northwood School in Durban North, where he's been the director of rugby and the first 15 rugby coach. In the time, he has helped to rebuild the rugby program at Northwood into the force that it is today. He has led the first team to a number of very historic and significant victories, and he's also helped to produce a host of SA schools and KZN rugby representatives. Bashy is passionate about rugby, but he's also really passionate about being a lifelong learner, about coaching, about self-improvement. And in today's episode, we talk a little bit about his coaching style and coaching philosophy and how that's evolved. We get some insight into his thoughts around leadership, and we also hear a little bit more around the importance of team culture and how that plays a role in successful teams. I hope that you enjoy. Hi, Bashy. How are you doing?
Good, thanks, JB. Bit cold in Durban today, but all good this side. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, listen, firstly, I just want to say thank you so much again for joining me. It's a real privilege to have you as my first guest.
No, it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Awesome. Cool. Well, listen, let me dive straight into it. My first question is really around coaching. You know, you've obviously worked as a professional coach for a number of years. But even before that, coaching's always been part of your career since the very beginning. So I suppose my first question really is, how would you describe your current coaching style or coaching philosophy? And has that evolved at all over the years?
It's a really good question because obviously I come from a teaching background. So part of our duties as teachers in the 80s was we coached teams at school. It was part of our what we did, you know, so days you'd teach and afternoons you'd coach. So even in my playing days, I was coaching, you know, whether I liked it or not, it was part of my job. And it was actually the part that I enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
And if you think back, what's really changed most in coaching, and like you say, how have we evolved? I mean, there's been massive evolution in coaching. I think if we go back 30 years, the biggest difference between then and now is technology, you know, and how people have changed. So in our era, or the early eras, we all went to the army. Coaching was done through instruction. You know, there was very little give and take. It was the person who had the most knowledge, everyone wanted to follow, you know, so that's how your leader became. It was basically content, and knowledge had power. You know, now if you look at it in today's modern era, we've got international cricketers that have taught themselves to bowl on YouTube. You know, a guy like Sunil Narain, I think, has learnt his trade watching YouTube, never been coached in his life. So it just shows that how things have evolved. So I think if I look back to then and now, I think a coach in the modern era, you know, if he's a dictator, he's going to be in trouble. And I think the modern coaching role is more of a facilitator. You know, so it's a person that's taking the time to get to know his team, his players personally, you know, that is a good questioner, you know, so it's about how do you get to the solution you want through good questioning, you know, and making everyone feel part of the process. So I'd say in a nutshell that the biggest change for me would be how the lack of or the change from instruction to facilitator really is what's changed the most in modern coaching.
Amazing. I think that's such a powerful insight. And you know, I know we've both read Paddy Upton's book, and I know he talks in there about that sort of break in the learning cycle. How I think, just to your point, how very often it was the coaches doing all the thinking and the players just did all the doing. But actually, if you start involving the players in the thinking, you start to create thinking players, you know, who do more than just the action part, but are actually able to think and adapt on the field and not just waiting for instruction.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest change from a mindset perspective is coaches have to be comfortable to give away a bit of power, you
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
and that's the change. You know, it's no longer just about the coach.
Yeah.
You know, so in the old days, you just led through dictation,
Yeah.
and this is how we're going to do it, and there's very little input from anyone else. You
Yeah.
know, now you give away a bit of power, and through that way the leader actually gains some influence, and it becomes sort of the new power. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest change in modern coaching, you know.
Awesome, Bashy, awesome. And I mean, just speaking a little bit about that journey, I mean, you've obviously had the opportunity to coach alongside and to be connected with some of the best rugby coaches in South Africa and internationally. I mean, the likes of Dick Muir, John Plumtree, John Mitchell. Have there been any learnings that you've gained from them over that time? Anything that's influenced how you currently lead or develop a team?
Yeah, so just those three names you've mentioned are all highly successful coaches. You know, all coached at international level. Plum's now the assistant coach with the All Blacks. Dickie was involved with the Springboks, and Mitch coached the All Blacks at a very tender age. You know, so these massive opportunities for me. I've been so lucky with my pathway, you know, that I've been able to rub shoulders and learn off those guys along the way. You know, and obviously they have a massive influence along the way, as I'm saying. But you never stop learning, JB. You learn off everyone, you know. And I think the key with all of those guys is, although you're learning off everyone, I don't think you must ever lose your own identity. You know, I think I can never be Muir or anyone. I think if you talk about certainly myself, Plummy and Dickie, we were all coached in the Mac era under Mac, you know. So if you think about influence, we've all sort of been influenced by Mac in our coaching paths, and yet we also different, you know. So I think the key is to keep your identity. You know, you learn from everyone, and you take from everyone the bits that can add to your style, if that's the right way. But I mean, I can't be Ian Mac, and I can't be John Plumtree. I can be Grant Bashford. And I think the real test is, how do you become the best version of yourself, you know, by actually gaining as much as you can from everyone, you know. So massive opportunities. I mean, I've been so fortunate with my coaching pathway, the timing of it, you know, through the amateur era into the professional era, how much the game's changed, you know, how fortunate I've been with my pathway and my learnings along the way, and having the ability to have learned from the best, you know. I mean, all of those guys, they all great, brilliant coaches and highly successful, you know, but they're also different and yet so similar. That's the beauty of coaching, is that we're all different and yet we are so similar. But one thing that they all had in common, and that was, including Mac himself, was they never ever lost the fun element to the game, you know. And I think if you look at environments that I see, you can almost see the ones where there's still the fun element, you know. So I mean, Dickie was ahead of his time, sort of in South African coaching. I think he brought his personality to his coaching, and the players would have taken a bullet for him. You know, he just created this, what's in front of you, less conservative, less kicking kind of game. And then Plum brought a bit more structure to the game, but never lost what Dickie had, you know. So, and then Mitch in his own right. Mitch has come through the New Zealand coaching system and certainly spent a lot of time in South Africa, currently with England. You know, so Mitch's pathway, I know that he picked up a lot of criticism along the way. And if you have a chat to Mitch now, his learnings of that, he's a totally different coach today as he was 5 years ago, you know. And that goes back to the pathway. You know, I think we all on this continual pathway to self mastery, but we'll never get there. But you never stop trying, So
Absolutely.
it's pretty much learning every day, off wherever you can.
Absolutely. I mean, I love what you said there, just the importance of being a lifelong learner, I suppose, firstly. But secondly, that idea of also being like remaining authentic in yourself. Like you said, like you can't be someone else. We can learn from someone else. It's to take the bits that can work, but actually by becoming becoming more of yourself, becoming the best version of yourself, that's actually where a lot of the power comes from. So I love that.
I see it all the time in coaching, so when you watch young coaches coach, they're doing a drill that they've seen someone else do, and then you ask them what they want to achieve from the drill, and they're actually not quite sure, but they're doing it with teams.
Yeah.
And I think therein is the answer, that it's all about yourself. You're creating your own identity and your own belief system, and having the confidence to go out there. And that certainly doesn't mean not learning. I mean, we, as I say, we never ever stop learning. I mean, I'm learning every day. I'm learning off the younger coaches at the school and some of my players. You're learning all the time. You never stop.
That's awesome.
But I certainly, it can only be me. I think that you can't try and be someone else, but trying to get to be the best version of yourself you can.
Absolutely. And I mean, just touching on what you were saying about Ian Mack and his influence, Bashy, sort of brings me on to my third question, which is around leadership. How important is leadership to a team, and for you personally, what are some of the characteristics that you look for in a leader or a leadership group?
Well, I think it's also, I mean, leadership is the toughest job in the world, and I think if you look at the world's greatest leaders, I mean, if we asked 20 people who the greatest leaders in the world were, you had to go far away to find the name that Nelson Mandela's name didn't come up, or Mother Teresa, or Gandhi, or people like that.
Absolutely.
And if you look at those people, what were they? They were all prepared to die for their cause. So massive belief in what they believed, and were prepared to actually take a bullet and die for the cause. Now, that's certainly not what we're asking of our rugby players. But for me, the secret that I always drive with our leadership groups along the way is it's a doing thing and not a talking thing. And when you look to put a leadership group together, everyone wants to be part of it, until they realize the responsibility that goes with being part of that leadership group. And I sit in the corner and listen to your chats with the leaders, and they're all coming up with these great ideas about what it is to lead and that. And then I'll just drop in and say, listen, okay, boys, you can make whatever values you want, but remember, you live by them. And then it's a whole different ball game, because it's tough. I think the real thing in team sports is leadership is so important, because all we as coaches get is our preparation. So when that whistle blows on a Saturday, we're not on the field. So who owns the environment and who owns the team? And it has to come from the leaders.
Absolutely.
So if you're totally a control freak and you want to dominate everything, when that whistle goes and there's no one out there leading or owning the environment and driving the standards on the field and those kind of things, then your team's got a massive chance of getting into trouble. So I think also in the modern game that your leadership groups have become massive just because of the importance of Saturday. So like I say, what all we get is our preparation. So we get Monday through Friday to pretty much install in the team our plans, which is inclusive. They'll have a say in that. But come Saturday, they're on their own, and then you hand over the reins and you just trust your preparation, because that's all you get. But with that good preparation comes confidence, and that's the only way players become confident, is they feel they've trained well, had a good week, that's been well driven by your leadership, and it's not my idea, it's our idea, because everyone's had a say in how we're going to perform on Saturday and the strategies and that kind of thing. Life becomes a whole lot easier, when you've got the characters on the field that are owning the environment and driving the team with the standards that they've come up with.
Absolutely. And I mean, actually, just speaking about that, I mean, bringing me on to my next question perfectly there. Obviously we both believe in the power of team culture. the importance of having a team that's built on good culture. Why for you is that an important part of a successful team, and how does it go about kind of contributing towards that success?
Yeah, so culture is really interesting for me, and I can tell you, for me, if I watch a team play, I can straight away see what the culture of the team's like. So
Sure.
when you see guys running around with a smile on their face, and a guy makes a mistake and the tap on the arse and not a moan, you straight away go, well, something's going on in this group.
Yeah.
So the culture of your team is pretty much the values by which you're going to live.
Yeah.
So culture for me is massive. There's
Yeah.
a lot of teams out there that when you see them play, they're full of stars, and yet their performances are not great. And then you see other teams that are not full of stars but are punching above their weight. And then you see teams that if you look at the Sharks as a prime example of this right now at the moment, we lost a lot of big name players at the end of last year to overseas. And Sean Everett had the courage to pick a whole lot of quality youngsters. And before lockdown, we go into that, and you seeing a tied top of Super Rugby, with a pretty inexperienced group. And for me, the beauty of that is what I've really enjoyed about the Sharks is, yes, winning's fantastic, but for me, it's just how the players seem to be loving what they're doing again, and running around with smiles on their faces and prepared to take a bullet for each other, and the work ethic. And you can just see the culture of that group has changed for whatever reason. I don't know the details, but it's so visible for me to see teams with great cultures.
Absolutely.
And I think if you look hard enough, there's not too many successful teams in the world that don't have good culture,
Absolutely.
And it has to, if you look at Crusaders, I mean, they've probably in Super Rugby been the most consistent side over all the years. And if you look at what goes on within their environments, and I've been fortunate enough to chat to people and that have been in those environments, and it's driven by the players and the culture of the group, So
absolutely,
it doesn't matter. It's not about individuals. The team's more important than the individuals, and they drive the culture of the group, and it's very visible in the way they play.
Absolutely. You're so right. And I mean, exactly that. If you look at these successful teams around the world, you can see how they sort of have culture at the, you look at Liverpool again, you read about how Klopp has revolutionized that team. And again, it's all about a team first culture always. A culture almost starts to take on a life of its own. You said it actually starts to become also less about what the coach thinks or what I think. This is what we've agreed, and people who don't ascribe to that, the culture actually almost ejects them out of the system. It's not even a personal opinion anymore.
Something that you've just said there, JB, is so key. I think with culture is not the coach's culture. It's massively important that it's collective. So who drives the culture of the team? Whose values are those? It's not about me saying this is what I think we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. I mean, you spent 6 weeks over 3 years with Northwood at a time, basically coming up with the values and culture of our group that's been driven by the players.
Absolutely.
And the protocol system. So there's nothing that happens in our environment that they haven't created for themselves. So when someone's late 3 times and he's suspended and can't play, it's not the coach's my fault. I mean, they've actually gone against their own protocols and their own values. And for that, there's a consequence, So I think for me, the key with culture is that it's collective. It's not a top down. That everyone's got to have input into it. And having said that, it's also not a country club environment. That you just put in there with that massive responsibility.
Yes.
And there's certainly going to be non-negotiables. So it's not about just come and run around and have fun and we do what we want at all. I mean, and that's got to start with work ethic and preparation. So I think the culture's got to be collective, but certainly the coach has to play a massive role in that it doesn't become all the good bits and no bad bits. It's still got to be honest, massively honest. And sometimes honesty is giving bad news and telling it as it is, which is not nice to hear. But it's necessary, But once those value system and cultures in place, we live by a set of values and not rules. And
Absolutely.
those values have been designed by the collective. It's
Yeah.
certainly not me or you or the headmaster or anyone else. It's us. We're in this together, and this is the rules we've chosen, or the values we've chosen to live by.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of making sure that you do that.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. And I suppose it kind of leads me on to my final question, which is, we're living in a world that's so driven by results, where we're all being pushed towards needing to achieve and to also achieve quickly, particularly in sport. I mean, as you know, the pressures are really high. How do you as a coach or as a leader of a team create that, or kind of have that balance between pushing the team towards wanting to succeed and achieve, but not creating an environment that's just, driven by fear and constant pressure?
Yeah, also, geez, I mean, if that's a tough question to answer, but I think for me the biggest change from certainly when we spoke earlier about what it was like coaching in the 80s, 90s, 2000s compared to now, I think social media has intensified pressure on everyone. There's nothing. Professional players go now out on a Saturday after a game and have a few beers or relax, and there's always a camera, and there's always someone snipping away at you. In the old days, unless you read the back page of the Sunday Tribune on a Sunday, you wouldn't know what had happened on Saturday at the Shark in Pretoria, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's what's changed the intensity of what you're talking about. But the reality of it, Justin, is as much as we want to say, look, we don't have the pressure. If you're going to coach, you're going to be scrutinized and you're going to be judged, unfortunately. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's part of our jobs, and we fully understand that. So if you look at that, what do you do about that? So so what's going to give us the best chance of performing well? And it's not necessarily the win. So we all know as coaches, sometimes we lose and we're immensely proud, and other times we win and we're really disappointed. So it's certainly not about win-lose. I mean, if you lose often enough, you're going to be under pressure in whatever portfolio or role you have in a team. But the reality is, all you can do is focus on the now. All you can do, the pressure will be there, but if you worry too much about what everyone else is saying and what's going to happen tomorrow, then it can get to you. So the only thing you can control is the now. And we always talk about controlling the controllables. And I believe that as the coach of the team, I need to do everything in my power to take as much pressure off the players, and rather let me wear that, than them wear it. And I think last year we had a perfect example after our first loss at home. And we're going into another game, and I'd said to you during the week how poor our training had been. And eventually on Thursday, it dawned on me that the players were terrified of losing again. Because the whole year had been built up to this game, and and suddenly we'd been at home once and lost once, and we had a big game on the Saturday. And I just said to them, boys, just forget about the result. Let's just go out there and be the best we can be. And almost you could feel like it was the pressure just went away. And sure enough, we came out Saturday and won a game in the rain, which was basically kicked off our campaign again after that first loss. So as coaches, we'd all like to say, hey, look, the pressure, I'm tough. I mean, I don't feel the pressure and this and that. Everyone feels pressure. You fake it till you make it. Everyone's feeling the same things. But the key is to focus on what you can control, and that's all we get. So we get our preparation. Let's make sure we put everything into that. And if we get that pretty right, our performance on Saturday should be good, bar external factors or distractions that we might not know about. But it's all about controlling the controllables, and that for me is the key. A lot of the pressure that comes is the pressure we put on ourselves as well. And I think with experience and as you get older, you realize that the sun's still going to come up tomorrow, and life will continue as per normal, and I think when you're younger, you sort of judge yourself on your results. And the older you get, I mean, for me now, with my coaching, which I love. I mean, this lockdown, as I said to Wendy the other day, my wife, if it hadn't been for the rugby and the coaching, I've actually enjoyed the lockdown kind of thing, being able
Yeah.
to spend quality time with family and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which is ironic because it's not the way it should be. But the coaching side of it is the bit we really love. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, the winning and losing is one thing, but for me, I've sort of changed my thinking about it. So if I look at
Sure.
a scale of poor to gifted players,
Yeah.
um, my role, I believe, is to progress those players along that pathway. So
Yeah.
at the end of the year, I would like to think that every player that's been in our group has progressed towards from poor on the one side to gifted on that. They've progressed in a positive direction. If
Yes.
they've done that, it's a job well done by the
Yeah.
coach,
Absolutely.
because unfortunately, um, some of the teams that we've had in the past haven't had the quality of players that
Yeah.
we've played against. So winning might have been an unrealistic target,
Yes.
but if all you're doing is judging yourself on results, then it's a failure of the season. Whereas
Yeah.
if we picked up getting an SA schools player and three Natal schools players or something in that year and a pretty average team,
Yeah.
is that a job well done? Not well done,
Yeah.
So I think
Absolutely.
you've got to deflect away from winning all the time,
Yeah.
but I think also got to be realistic to know that if you lose often enough, the pressure's going to come,
Absolutely.
and that's the reality. As much as we want to think that we're being hardly done by whatever, it's all about results at the end of the day. But doing what you can to put yourself in a best position to get those results along the
Absolutely.
way.
And I love what you were saying there because it's really about perspective. Firstly, hey, I mean, it's about shifting that perspective off the results and onto the process, and that also helps with the mindset because, like you said, that's what you can control. That's what you can prepare for. That's where you can focus your efforts. And also, I think all the things you've spoken about already. If you've got a good culture that's supporting and reinforcing that environment, if you've got a coach who's or the leaders of the team who are being consistent in their message, and they're reinforcing those values and those behaviors, and it helps to then drive what you're getting. If you're going to say results don't matter, but then you're a coach that tears the team apart when they lose and you're only happy when they win, then you're not really living what your message is. The players get conflicting messages, and that's something. I mean, I've given you that feedback before and said I think you do that incredibly well. You're very measured. The players get the same person, before a game, halftime talk after the game, and I think that's important because it helps to create the environment that shows what we're going to focus our efforts on. And I think as a result, actually, you actually get the results quicker because you're almost focusing less on them and you're focusing on the processes.
Well, I think that what you're talking about, you see it all the time, JB. So
Yeah.
it basically what we've spoken about the whole thing is you'll get coaches that will say, geez, like we want to encourage our players to play with flair and do this and the whole thing. And I've been one of those coaches along the way. And
Yeah.
the first mistake they make, you're like, geez, what are you doing? Stop doing that to change. And that's the thing with coaching. I think the older you get and the more time you spend at the crease with coaching, and you start to realize that, hey, it's a game. Yes, there's lots riding on this game, and we've lost Super Rugby finals after being ahead going into injury time.
Yep.
So the sun does come up. You learn those along the way, but you need to be pretty measured, I think, in your way, and consistent. Because one thing I've noticed, players, coaches, so they pick up a lot of energy off you, so
Absolutely.
even if I arrive, I'm looking nervous and a big game and that, they're going, oh, geez, coach is nervous today. And they feel that, if you come in with a smile on your face and boys, great weeks of prep and we're ready for this kind of thing, suddenly that confidence just floats over into the environment. So it's all a tough old industry. You can have your greatest week and lose, and you can have your worst week and win. And quite often when your team's practices is the poorest one you've had in the year, you get really excited because they're going to play well on Saturday, and vice versa. And you have a great captain's practice and then wait on Saturday. I always go to my conditioning group and say, what do you think of the warm-up? How's the warm-up going? And they go, oh, geez, I'm worried, the guys. And then I'm actually quite excited, because I think, okay, well, we're all right. So there's no hard and fasts in the rules, but once again, we go, I know I'm harping on it, but all we get is our preparation. And that's why you've got to be really hard on yourself as a coach and make sure that you're prepared. If you try and uncover and turn every stone, make sure that you try to think about everything that could happen or would happen, and actually put yourselves in those scenarios and talk about it. I think being vulnerable as well is key. That sometimes you need to say to the guys, how can I feel if after 10 minutes we 15-0 down and we're under the poles? How's it going to feel? And if you talk about it when it happens, and then you're like, guys, trust your fitness. We've got it. Let's just tighten the game up now. Let's score next. We'll be back on the board. And if you actually try and cover all the areas that could happen, good and bad, and talk about them, it sort of sets the scene when you're on those positions. It doesn't make it as bad kind of thing as it could be.
Absolutely. Bashy, listen, thank you so much for your time. I'm ending on that note. It's such a wonderful, I just love chatting with you about all of these things that we're so passionate about. I love what you were saying just about the perspective at the end. I think that's such a good message for everyone. Like you said, the sun will always come up tomorrow. And, for the team to kind of keep that perspective, I think is really important. So, thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody watching will have taken something away as well.
No, Justin, thanks so much. What you do for our group at Northwood, a massive part of our success in the last few years is certainly not down to me. It's down to all of us, what the input that you've brought to the team and the culture that we've driven from everyone. It's never one person, and I talk about that all the time with my management group. I mean, when it goes well, everyone praises the coach, but it's never just the coach, and that, and we all know that. But massive thanks for all you do for us at Northwood as well.
Oh, thanks, Bash. Thanks, I really appreciate it, and we'll chat soon. Keep well.
Take care, Justin. Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.
Thanks,